We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're told inflation is a high-class problem. We're informed that supply issues are a mere treadmill tragedy. Are the talking heads in the Biden administration correct? Have mere mortals been needlessly worried about putting food on the table and paying more for gas? After all, if you're not in the dreaded 1%, surely it won't impact you. Well, that's the fairy tale. And to help us unravel the narrative is our own brother Grimm, economist and author Andrew Moran. Welcome back, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, I always thought inflation impacted everyone. Was I wrong?
Well, it reminds me of in 17th century France when all the royals and all the high powerful people, they all concentrated in Versailles and they abandoned everywhere else. They had no clue what was going on in other parts of the country. And that's pretty much the same thing happening in the United States today. All these powerful officials, they're all focused in Washington and they have no idea what's going on in Mississippi or Alabama or anywhere else in the country. But when it comes to inflation, it doesn't impact the rich as much as it impacts the low and middle income Americans. Whether you're sitting in government or you're a hedge fund manager, you're in that top 1% or you're in the top, 0.5%, whatever it is. And you're raking in all the dough and you're tapping into that well of the Federal Reserve money printing. So it doesn't impact you as much as it would as someone living in a Biloxi, Mississippi. And, when the elites are so disconnected from the daily realities of everyday Americans, it's easy to see how dismissive some of these people can be. Like Jen Psaki the other day, she said, it's the tragedy of the treadmill. It's only the whole supply chain is about treadmills. It's just nonsense. But at the same time, you can't fault the administration. When you have some people claiming that inflation wouldn't be high if you count things that are causing inflation to be higher, they have no clue what they're doing. So I can't really fault them for their ignorance and arrogance.
Yeah. So it seems that the Biden administration is trying to make the American public believe that they're just not affected by the supply chain issues or the rising costs of goods. Now, is there any actual data driving that idea, or is it all more of an illusion to help Democrat supporters keep the faith in the run-up to the 2022 midterms?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the latter part. It is probably an illusion on the part of the administration. When you see all the messaging occurring from the administration right now, these supply chains are high-class problems or inflation spikes are high-class problems or, it's going to subside. It really shows how much, they're dismissing issues that are affecting the so-called forgotten man. Fuel, there's going to be fuel problems. You're having, Lisa Donner, she sent me an image recently of a supermarket in Virginia, and the produce aisle was completely empty. It was remarkable to see. This is the United States. You don't see these problems very much. You see them mostly, in Venezuela and on all these socialist countries, not in an advanced economy like the United States. So it's just the government trying to tell you something that you see with your own eyes that you're dismissing what they're saying.
I actually noticed, speaking of that photograph, which I also saw, that was Lisa K. Donner, our Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Andrew was referencing there. And that there's actually a narrative coming out in the Fourth Estate that many of these pictures are from foreign countries or from different times, trying to dismiss what people are actually seeing. Now, there's an interesting corollary with this, that in the UK, those who were anti-Brexit, or Remainers as they're often called, they were posting pictures from supermarkets with empty shelves for the last year and a half. And it was, by and large, photographs from foreign countries or from 6 or 7 years ago. But the reality is that although that was a put-up job, as we call it in England, in the US, that was a picture taken by our very own Scott D. Cosenza on the Talking Liberty segment. So this was a real photograph taken recently, and you have the media denying that it's actually happening. Now, surely the public can see through this when they go to fill up their cars or when they do a grocery shop. They see the empty shelves. How do they hope to win on this?
Yeah, it reminds me of that. I don't know if you've ever seen the Marx Brothers movie, Duck Soup. Chick Marx, he delivers that great line. He says, "Who you gonna believe, me or your own eyes?" The people see it, the people feel it obviously in their pocketbooks. But these politicians, they hardly ever leave the confines of their lavish homes and their opulence in Washington. So perhaps they really don't know what the heck's going on. And if you look at many of the surveys the two premier sources you look to for this kind of information is the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and the University of Michigan, and they publish these monthly surveys surveying the public of their views of inflation. The latest numbers show that people are expecting higher inflation over the next 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. So the public is obviously not very trustful of the administration or even the Federal Reserve trying to solve this problem. So it just shows once again the vision of the anointed is not the vision of the public. The public doesn't believe anything that's coming out of Washington, nor do they trust that they can solve this problem. Well, nor could they, because it's government. Government doesn't solve problems. Governments exacerbate problems.
That actually does bring me very nicely onto my final question for you, Andrew. It seems to me that people in a position to talk about these things, they're casting away their, let's call it integrity, whatever integrity they have remaining, by supporting what the administration peddles, despite their knowledge that that's just not accurate. And that appears to entail cutting Joe Biden slack regardless of the cost. Now, I think this was made quite apparent recently with the Treasury coming to Joe Biden's rescue. Now, you wrote about this on the pages of LibertyNation.com, but would you care to fill us in on the details?
Yeah, I really found this remarkable, because if you watch Janet Yellen in the weeks heading into that October 18th deadline and read these letters she wrote to Congress, her whole message was that if lawmakers don't act, Treasury is going to be running out of money. They won't have any more extraordinary measures to employ to ensure that America can cover its obligations. Out of nowhere, now Janet Yellen says, oh, yeah, we have a few more extraordinary measures we can use heading into December 3rd, which is the next the debt ceiling deadline between the Republicans and Democrats, which only makes me think, okay, so if they once again, let's say, postpone it and delay it again in December, is Janet Yellen going to say out of nowhere, oh, yeah, we have a few more tricks up our sleeves, and now we're going to start miraculously cover the bills again until the next debt ceiling deadline in February or March? So, yeah, I mean, I don't think at all politicians have any integrity or any U.S. bureaucrats, but this is just absurd to me of how, the doom and gloom that was coming out of her mouth so many times, whether it was on Capitol Hill or in television interviews. And also, it just shows once again, these people have no clue what they're talking about. I've written about this many times. Janet Yellen was saying there's no inflation. Now she's saying inflation is red hot, but she's still saying that is transitory. So these people are just, it's baffling, and they make six figures a year. They have all these great connections, and how do they get these jobs? They're wrong on everything all the time. Is that one of those when you have these job ads for government, one of the things that you have to be wrong all the time? Is that what's going on in Washington? Let me know. I want that job. I'm glad to be wrong all the time.
Well, Operation Save Joe Biden's Legacy is certainly a high-paying career, but it might cost you your soul. Andrew Moran, thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio, heard across the Radio America network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. Remember, you can tune in for Liberty Nation from 2 to 3 p.m. on Sunday on KBKW 103.5 FM and 1450 AM, the talk of Grays Harbor. Coming up soon on the show, we'll be discussing the latest cases that impact your liberty. But next up, we're going to figure out why Joe Biden is intent on hiring nobody but activists. Don't touch that dial. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.